This is a fun autumn knitting pattern that uses a simple brioche stitch in its construction. For those seeking to learn how to knit the brioche stitch, this is a perfect pattern to choose. This pattern is marked as advanced simply because it uses the brioche stitch. Measuring gauge on brioche can be a little bit difficult. When choosing your size, feel free to go down if needed. This tutorial is for women's size small. For additional sizes, see description below. With a US number 8 circular knitting needle, cast on 31 stitches with the long tail cast on or your preferred cast on method. The method that you choose does need to be an elastic cast on. This is because the brioche stitch is a lofty stitch, and without enough elasticity in your cast on, your knitting will bunch at the bottom. So make sure when you do cast on, it is elastic and it is also loose enough to fit the elasticity of the brioche stitch. There are two different methods for the long tail cast on. What you see here is the thumb method. The other method is called the slingshot method. Side note, the way that is written in the pattern is different from what you are seeing here. However, the end result will still be the same. So you're going to work your setup row. So you are going to knit, bring your yarn to the front, slip the next stitch, and then you're going to knit the next stitch, and you'll notice that this creates a yarn over. And you are doing this all with the same color of yarn that you used to cast on with. Just going to repeat that to the end of the row. So knit one, bring your yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch. Bring your yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch. All the way down to the end. And you're just going to make sure that you knit that last stitch. So here you can see we've reached the end of the row, and right now it is turned. So what you're going to do is slide the stitches all the way down the circular knitting needle to the other end. This should be where you have your cast on tail, and you're going to add your secondary color. What you're going to do here is you're going to slip the first stitch. It's like it got a little tangled here, so there we go, there's the first stitch on the knitting needle. And you can see how that stitch below with the yarn over is a purl stitch the bump was facing towards. So we're going to take that new color and we're going to purl both the yarn over and the stitch that yarn over is paired with. And then we're going to slip that next stitch, and then we're going to bring our yarn to the front, and we're going to purl that stitch, slip that next stitch. We're going to weave our yarn around to bring it back to the front and purl the next stitch. So slip, Wrap the yarn around to the front and purl. And you're just going to repeat that all the way down to the end. Here we are at the end, so we're just going to purl that last stitch. And then we're going to bring our purling yarn to the front before we slip the last stitch. So now basically both yarns are kind of sitting on the front and we are turning our work. So since both yarns are on one end, we're going to turn our work and then we are going to work down the knitting needle. So first one is going to be a purl stitch, and then we're going to slip the next stitch. We're going to bring our yarn around for that yarn over and then purl again. So slip the stitch, wrap our yarn around and purl. And we're just going to repeat doing that till we get to the end of our knitting. You can also see that the yarn that we just used is going to be the yarn that's on your yarn over. So if you ever get confused on what yarn you need to use, you're going to be using the yarn that's the opposite of your yarn overs at the end. So here we are at the end. We're going to slip one, we're going to do the yarn over, and then we're going to purl that last stitch. And we're not going to turn our work, instead we're going to pull the knitting needle through to get to the other side because we've got knitting strands, one on each side. So you only turn when both of your working yarns are on the same side. So you're going to slip your first stitch, bring the yarn to the back, and we're going to knit. And we're going to bring our yarn to the front, slip one, and then knit. Bring your yarn to the front, slip one, and then knit the next stitch. Bring your yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch, and continue down. When slipping your stitches, you always want to slip them purlwise unless you're told otherwise. This is because when you slip purlwise, you do not change the orientation of the stitch. If you slip it knitwise, you will change the orientation. On your knitting needles, your stitches should be sitting all in the same direction. Alright, here we are at the end, so we're gonna slip one, and then we're gonna knit those two stitches together. And then we're going to bring our yarn to the front and we're going to slip that last stitch on there. And then since both of our working yarns are on the same side, we are now going to turn our work. Alright, so we're going to knit the stitch, bring our yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch, bring our yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch. Note when I say knit the next stitch, you are knitting both the knit stitch and the yarn over. So it's called a BRK, and then the other way where you purl with yarn over is BRP. So to end on this row, you're going to bring your yarn to the front, slip one, and then knit the last stitch to finish off this row. This is row 2 on the knitting pattern instructions. So to continue to knit in brioche, you just follow the instructions from row 2. Continue working in 2-color rib brioche until your knitting has reached the length that you want for your mitts. End by working row 2. You will then turn your work and work row 1 with color A according to the written pattern. So that will be slip one, knit the next stitch, bring your yarn to the front, slip one, knit the next stitch. This is because you want all the stitches on that row to be the same color when you do your bind off. This will also be the only time that you turn your work where both of your yarns will not be on the same side. So here, just to finish up the end of that row, we're going to knit those stitches, bring your yarn to the front, slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, and actually probably going to want to knit or purl that last stitch. So here we're getting ready to do the bind off. So same thing with the cast on, you want to make sure that you use an elastic bind off. And you can see here, since I didn't work that stitch, I'm actually going to go ahead and work it now. I'm going to do what's called an elastic or K2 tug through the back loop bind off. So you're going to knit the first 2 stitches, and then you're going to K2 tug through the back loop. You're going to knit the next stitch, and then K2 tug those through the back loop, knit the next stitch, K2 tug through the back loop, and just repeat that all the way down to the end. Again, since Brioche Stitch is a very lofty and elastic stitch, you want to make sure you leave enough slack when you're doing both your bind off and cast on. You are also going to want to leave a long enough tail on both your cast on edge and your bind off edge to sew the 2 sides together. So here we are reaching the end, so we are just knitting those 2 stitches and then K2 tug through the back loop, knit the next stitch, K2 tug through the back loop, and just one more, knit the next stitch, K2 tug through the back loop, and just pull the yarn through that loop. There we go, we got a nice little rectangle of brioche. All right, now we're going to work on seaming. So I like to use the mattress seam when I'm seaming things together. So you want to make sure that you leave enough space for the thumb to fit through. So kind of take a moment, try to measure it out. So you see in knitting, you get a series of V's. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your yarn into the base of one of those V's. And then you're going to go to the other side and just have it slightly offset on the other side for that same set of V's. And then you're just going to walk slowly up, and that's the mattress stitch. And if you go too far up, you can just unthread it and pick it out if you need to. Holding your knitting side by side can help because you can kind of see where the yarn last came out of your knitting, so you can kind of go in and try to keep the edges even. Again, it's always helpful to check your measurements as you go. So here you can see, just double checking and seeing if it's at a good spot on the top. And I think it is, so you're just going to want to do the same thing on the bottom, and here you go. Here's that finished seam on the mitts. To strengthen your seams, I would recommend backtracking through your mattress stitch. To weave in ends, use the method that you would for a rib stitch. I have tutorials for both of those methods on my YouTube channel. So there you go, and I hope you enjoy making these brioche mitts.